So it was fun though. Oh no, we're so funny. This is a story of my life. I spent like yesterday, so I bought the tripod adapter on Amazon and was like, oh, this is totally not what I needed. And then so I'm driving around like every Best Buy on the planet trying to find the right tripod adapter, and then all of a sudden, like, I get home, open it up, and I'm like, oh no, this is perfect.
Oh, good. Well, good.
It would have been nice for me to actually have, I don't know, checked it first. Checked. So good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Welcome to Yin. How is everyone? It's going good. Good. So let's begin with introductions, as we most often do. Start on the corner and work our way around.
Jackie, Susan, Sadhana, Kelly,
Stephanie,
Arnie,
Prasanna,
Shelly, Teresa,
David,
Andrea,
Phil,
Dan, Toby.
And I'm Stuart. So welcome. So just a quick announcement before we get started. So as I mentioned last week, I had been hoping that we would be able to, sometime soon, offer some additional classes at the Shambhala Center in Scottsdale. It looks like that's going to happen. So I will have flyers. So what that will look like is it will be entirely donation-based. And it will actually flow directly to the Shambhala Center. So it'll actually also be a tax deduction. Right? So you'll just be giving with, so this is like the best possible way to do yoga, right? Like, not only do you get your down dog on, but you also get a tax write-off. And I'll be giving more information about dates and times, but it'll generally be in the evening after sort of work-ish, like 6:15, something like that. So let's begin. Let's get started by finding ourselves in a comfortable seated position, getting grounded and finding that essential dignity through the lower body, feeling the connection of the legs and the sitting bones down into the floor. And from that earth-like foundation, growing up one vertebra at a time, so that we feel space being created for the breath, allowing the shoulders to relax and the back of the skull as much as it can to hover over the sacrum. As we take some breaths in this dignified and open posture, feeling the quality of the breath as it comes into the body, feeling the body as the breath enters, and also attending to the feelings of the breath leaving the body and the body as the breath leaves. Opening with a bow, let's take the hands to the hip crease, elbows flared open. So we have a strong back and an open front. And on an exhale, just gently inclining the body forward. And slowly rising up. And releasing, let's start in our first preparatory posture, butterfly pose. So coming with the soles of the feet together, and the heels generously distanced from the pelvis such that we have the ability to open the thighs without needing additional props, we take a grip of the ankles and slowly beginning to draw the chest forward, we begin to come down, finding that place where we become stuck in the tightness in the body. And then allowing, if the back is comfortable with it, for the spine to round and the head to drop, relaxing into butterfly pose. As we relax, allowing ourselves to shift into the first of our 3 questions. The first being, am I here now? Reminding ourselves that this first question has to do with our innate capacity to draw ourselves back from distraction. So we're sitting in the posture, we're resting in the posture, and we notice the quality of the body and the pose. And then, for most of us, we then drift off into the thought stream. And we're drifting in the thought stream, and then all of a sudden, something catches our attention, and we come back. We suddenly find ourselves back in the present moment, and we're once again feeling what's going on in our body, noticing what's around us. And then we wander off again. We're attending to the coming back, becoming confident in our ability to return to this state of present moment awareness. This also helps us to remember that our practice is not intended to stop us from thinking. Remembering that the quality of mind is such that thinking is not something that we can ever fully turn off, but that rather we focus on the ability to return to present moment awareness when we do wander in thought. It's like the hygienic equivalent of learning to brush our teeth rather than never eating to keep our teeth clean. We'll always have to think, so no thought is not the goal. The goal is to return more and more rapidly from getting lost in thought. And if you're newer to this practice, you'll hear 3 chimes, 1 for each of the questions, and on the 3rd chime, we come up and out of the pose. Am I here now? Can I feel what's going on in my body? And can I relax around that sensation? So please, if you would, slowly begin to come up. And as you come up, take a moment in the upright position just to feel the quality of the body. And then coming down onto our abdomens as we take Sphinx pose. So coming down. And most of us will begin with the elbows under the shoulders, with the legs spread a little bit wider than the hips. For others, from this position, because of suppleness in the spine, we'll press the arms straight. And for others, because we're working on creating suppleness, the elbows will actually shift forward of the shoulders and the legs will go slightly wider. Allowing ourselves to be in the posture with the low back sensation without feeling in any way, shape, or form tight or anxious in the pose. The head relaxed like a ripe fruit dangling off a branch. And breathing here, noticing for many of us the strong sensation in the meeting point of the low and mid spines. Helping us to connect to the second question, can I feel what's going on in my body? This question reminds us or draws our attention to our tendency to think about our feeling rather than to feeling what is going on. So the tendency is to experience a sensation, to label it, and then to add a story to it. So we feel the low back, we feel the knee in a posture, we feel the shoulder, and then we begin to add layers to it in terms of, oh, I wonder if I'm injuring my back, or, oh, that's my bad knee, or I really hope I don't re-injure my shoulder. And then you sort of continue down the river until all of a sudden you've visualized your life as a cripple in anticipation of all the bad things that are going to happen because you did Sphinx pose in this class. It's a note to the newer people, no one has ever been crippled by taking this class. But if you'd like to be the first, I'd at least love you to really concentrate on the second question as you are making yourself one. Point being is that we tend to get wrapped up in this narrative rather than really experiencing the feeling of the body, the texture of sensation in the body. In many ways, perhaps part of, as another teaching, this helps us to really recognize the nature of discomfort and fear. As Jack Kornfield says in his Roots of Buddhist Psychology course, fear, for example, is really about the anticipation of what will come next. We can only experience fear truly in a condition where we are worried about the future. Because what we experience in the moment is the sensation, and then fear is the layer on top of it that we create because of our concerns about what will happen next. Am I here now? Can I feel what's going on in my body? Can I relax around that sensation? So please come down, pause. Feel the quality of the back. Notice any narratives that you might be creating, and then just try to return to the feeling. For our next posture, which is a twist, the last of our preparatory poses, please keep your head oriented as it is and roll onto your spine, repositioning yourselves on your mats as necessary. And to do this pose, a very simple supine twist, just on your back, bend your knees. And with the knees bent, taking a moment to remind ourselves of the right and left sides of the body, we'll drop the knees to the right. And as much as we can, given our shoulders, take our left arm overhead. Those working with restrictions in the spine will just lift the top knee away from the bottom knee to reduce the sensation. And those with more flexibility here will take the bottom right ankle and bring it on top of the left, increasing the leverage in the pose, increasing the twist in the pose. And breathing here. Our third and final question is, can I relax around that sensation? So having experienced the feelings in the body, perhaps connecting sometimes for the very first time to the rawness, complexity of sensation, can we then just soften around that in that we don't grasp in with thought and begin to make the sensation more permanent, more concrete than it truly is. With this question, we're really working on trying to remove the tendency to fixate and to fix and embed in our memory the quality of a feeling. So we just continue to attend to the sensation. Once we feel something, we then relax the thinking process and allow the feeling to be as it is. It's helpful to also recognize that these are, in some ways, impossible instructions, impossible goals, and that there will be times where we just simply will not be able to relax. There will be times where we cannot be present. And rather than allowing these to confirm our inability to practice, we instead take them as indications that continuing to practice is worthwhile, that there's room for improvement. Again, using the teeth as a metaphor, it's like saying we go to the dentist and we find out that we have a cavity, so we just decide to stop brushing. So instead of abandoning our attention because we have a thought or because we get wrapped up in a thought, instead of abandoning the practice, we instead intensify it. Or, at the very least, just continue along with it. Am I here now? Can I feel what's going on in my body? Can I relax around that sensation? So please, if you would, come back to center slowly. Allowing your body some time to adjust. And please also take a moment here to stretch out and release the spine if that feels appropriate for you. Before moving on to the other side, so now the left side, knees bent, feet flat on the floor, we drop the knees to the left, and we raise the right arm. Feeling free to lift the right leg off of the bottom left to reduce sensation, or to hook the left ankle on the outside of the right knee so as to deepen the sensation as we drop the legs over to the side. And breathing. As we take this last side, beginning to transition towards the main part of our practice. Today, continuing our exploration of the Buddhist mind training slogans, the Lojong slogans. Today's slogan being, don't try and be the fastest. Other interpretations or translations of this slogan include things like, don't aim to be first and don't aim to win. and we're going to focus on the gallbladder line. So if you're newer to this class, we really use 3 frameworks, 3 pillars to guide our practice here. One is traditional Chinese medicine, which we use as the sort of physical and energetic foundation of how we choose postures, how we sequence the class. Buddhism, particularly informed by the Shambhala Buddhist practice created by Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. And finally, the 3 questions, which guide how we experience each posture in a mental and emotional way. So our focus today on the gallbladder, which is called the Minister of Justice, running the outside line of the leg up through the torso, where it continues up through the side of the neck and then into right above the eye sockets, in the inner line of the nose. Writing about the gallbladder in their book, Between Heaven and Earth, Harriet Beinfeld and Ephraim Kornwright, the gallbladder imparts the power of decision and the liver the power of action. The purity of the bile assures pure and proper judgment, clarity of vision, thought, and decision-making. If the liver and gallbladder are dissonant, action occurs without judgment, decisions go unactualized, or a Hamlet-like paralysis of decision and action persist. Metaphorically, the gallbladder and bile form a liquid crystal like the lens of the eye, through which we perceive existent and anticipated inner and outer reality. Our presence, our prescience, and foresight arise from this faculty. Am I here now? Can I feel what's going on in my body? Can I relax around that sensation? So please, if you would, come back to center slowly. Take your time here, stretching out. And we'll prepare to enter the main practice. So if you would, please, bring yourself up to seated and turning around to face towards the nominal front of the room. Today's class will be hip dominant, so we're going to always explore a couple of different options here. We're going to start in sleeping swan, which is pigeon pose, renamed. So let's start with perhaps an accessible version of this. And what I would say is that if you're struggling with sleeping swan because of hip tightness, please just start with figure 4 and coming forward here into the forward bend. This removes the tightness of the quadricep but introduces the tightness of the hamstring. If you have a little bit more flexibility in the hips, just keep the left leg in front and swing the right leg partially back so that you can come down this way. And then finally, if you're feeling very open, swing the leg all the way back, keeping the left leg in front. So with the leg extended back, we get the full stretch into the back right hamstring, quadricep, and then slowly bring ourselves down here. Yes, oh yes. There is nothing quite like the ability and permission to moan in a yoga class, and you are given that permission gladly here. Taken perhaps not to extremes. If this begins to sound like an Italian funeral, we'll have to dial it back a bit. But finding your way into the pose and remembering that you're staying here for about 5 minutes, so don't overdo it. The tendency in yin sometimes for people is to go strong into the pose and then find about 30 seconds in that strength is not the thing that we're really working for here. It's being able to sustain the posture mindfully. Please continue to attend to the 3 questions throughout practice, reminding yourself that when you snap back to say, am I here now? Once you're here, can I feel what's going on in my body, connecting to the sensations in the physical body? And finally, can I relax once you've committed to feeling the sensations in the posture very fully, without filtering through thought, then working to relax. Recognizing each time we do this, the goal is not to be perfect, but rather to continuously stay with the questions to whatever degree we can today. So our theme today is don't try and be the fastest. And in this theme, we're going to really look towards this idea of how do we work with our tendency to want to be first, to be best, to buy into the theories of first place is the only place worth having. And instead, how do we learn that our progress is based on how many people we bring along with us? How do we measure our progress by how many people we bring with us? Starting with the first stage of this, with an inspiration from Hafiz via Daniel Ladinsky's interpretations, a poem called Courteous to the Ant from the book The Gift. Very short. God blooms from the shoulder of the elephant who becomes courteous to the ant. God blooms from the shoulder of the elephant who becomes courteous to the ant. So starting perhaps with the idea that we are not the only ones in this world. It is the tendency of the ego, according to many spiritual traditions in the East, notably the various strands of the yoga philosophical systems in Mahayana Buddhism, that a primary focus of our life and mental experience is to, in some way, shape, or form, build up or aggrandize our own selves as a way to protect ourselves from the inherent dangers of the outside world, of which this pose, sleeping swan is obviously one. Am I here now? Can I feel what's going on in my body? Can I relax around that sensation? Coming out of this pose, best not for me to give you instruction as you just sort of find your way out. Either gracefully or just falling out of the nest. Pausing for a moment, perhaps first checking to make sure that your hips still work. And then, with some good humor, recognizing that there are two sides to this pose, and we have to do the other one. So again, please remember that our first variation is actually figure 4. Now, figure 4 typically is a focus on the hamstrings, but we're just allowing that leg, and you can achieve this by actually taking the energy of the pose more towards the right knee. You'll still feel the hamstrings, but you'll get more compression in the outer leg. Or swinging the leg around to a certain degree and coming here in half swan. Or again, taking the leg back and finding our way into a full, we might say, expression given the architecture that we're looking for.
What's the difference between sleeping swan and pigeon?
None. Name.
I wanted to make sure because I was like,
Don't worry, you're perfectly all right to feel like we've just renamed these for convenience. Right. A rose by any other name would still be as painful. A swan, Ekapada Raja Kapotasana, pigeon pose, would still be as hip stretchy. So we have this tendency to build ourselves up as a tool to prevent ourselves really from being very easily torn down, much like a castle. The king in a castle is surrounded by many defenses. Our ego is a series of layers, a series of walls. And you may remember from your childhood stories or fairy tales that have to do with princes or other sort of royal special figures who have been cursed to kind of be encased in many layers, or to be transformed into something that hides their true nature. In some cases, we could see this as kind of like the building of the ego elephant. Now, of course, in their native countries, elephants are often seen as wise and maternal, which is an important part of how we can transform this essential nature. But we begin from the idea that we begin to experience that kind of grace, that kind of opening when, as this inherently self-aggrandized and egocentric being, we begin to notice the small things. We begin to notice others. And that slowly begins to deflate us. So the elephant, who has no inherent need of being courteous to the smaller things, becomes a kind of vehicle for compassion when it does take that time to notice it. To notice those other people. And the elephant ego that we often carry around begins to deflate and relax slightly when we too turn our attention to others. In particular, those that we have the ability, because of our own privilege or position, to look down on. our other Lojong slogans have really directed us to this idea that we are really needing to be mindful about our tendency to want to ambush, to judge, to minimize others. You may remember the teachings of don't wait in ambush and don't talk about injured limbs. These are all ways that we help to diminish the dignity of others so as to artificially inflate the dignity of ourselves. We'd all like to think we're goldfish. We can only get bigger if we remove the other occupants of the bowl. So we start with this idea of noticing others, that we're not in this quote-unquote race alone. And we also recognize our tendency to be the elephant, to make ourselves so large such that we do not have to pay attention to the small things, the quote-unquote small people around us. Am I here now? Can I feel what's going on in my body? Can I relax around that sensation? So please slowly begin to come out. Little did you know that my secret plan here was to cripple your hips so that the next pose, when announced, you will not be able to get up or rush towards me to try and injure me. We're going to do, no one will like this announcement. For those of you who haven't been here before, this is the most hated pose in Yen Dragon. But we're going to do this a little bit differently. We're going to do a gallbladder focused dragon. So let's just get it over with. So please start by bringing your left foot forward in a lunge. For many of us, we're going to need to pad up the back knee. So we come into a lunge. Now here's what we're going to do to make this a little bit easier, perhaps. I will start the timer now, allowing you to use all of this time to both get set up and to be counted towards your dragon pose credit. But the ultimate position we're going to take here is we're going to come from this lunge and lay down on the side with our right arm straight. So it's a side bend. That's not going to make this necessarily any easier or more pleasant, but it will change the dynamic of how we stretch in the pose. So let me give you a couple of suggestions to make this easier. For some of us, just lowering down to the forearm will make this easier because there's less movement. This might be easier for some.
Foot is up here, right?
Yep, so your left foot is forward and your right forearm, I might have said left before, your right forearm comes down, or you rest on your right hand. You can take your hand out to the side as much as you like. So don't worry, the clock is going here. For those of you who are worried that for some reason I would not have started the clock. Now, if this completely and totally does not work for you, yeah, well, or you're Phil. So the other thing you can do is just come down onto your side and press yourself up here, resting your foot in front. Now, obviously, this is only for people who are not willing to work. Just kidding. No, just kidding. No, absolutely. Please take this position. Or, and again, searching not for maximal pain, but for maximal sensation, you can also lay on your back, take your legs over to the left as your right arm comes up. Again, the side waist bend is what's significant here in this posture.
Banana pose?
Banana pose, yes, banana pose.
Now, am I close to?
Oh no, you're perfect, Phil. Just stay right. Everyone do what Phil's doing. And oh, that's already 2 minutes gone. Can you believe it? Don't we all feel better for this? So, meanwhile, back to the teaching. So it's obligatory that I do this pose with you. So while we are in dragon pose, gallbladder dragon, so first we begin to soften that ego attachment. We begin to relax that tendency to view ourselves as bigger than others. Deflating that ego a little bit is a powerful tool here for learning not to be the fastest. Don't try to be first. Simply because we begin to realize that as we move towards being first, we actually begin to really separate ourselves from others. And that separation breeds actually more anxiety, more loneliness, and more of a need to continue to protect ourselves from the perceived threats out in our world. Once we have begun to deflate that ego a bit, and begun to open ourselves into the world, or open ourselves to the world, the Shambhala teachings kind of prompt us to recognize that the world around us needs some cheering up. As Chogyam Trungpa might say. Am I here now? Can I feel what's going on in my body? Can I relax around that sensation? Please fall out of the pose. Dragon. Rest for a day or so. Come back next week and we'll do the other side. So taking a moment here before we travel on to side 2, it's useful to reflect that dragons are oftentimes the things that protect the most precious thing in a story.
Well, they're usually protecting their own gold.
Sometimes, right? Or a princess or something similar, right? We always have to slay the dragon. So taking the other side when you're ready. Timer starts now. I think it would be perfectly fine if, for most of you, you just laid there for a bit and came in around 2.5 minutes. Whatever works for you, right? Being the hero is not always the most fun. So, finding ourselves in the second side of gallbladder dragon. I think this is the first time we've done dragon pose in all of 2015. just FYI, in case anyone was wondering, so we learn as we do this practice of sort of deflating ourselves, deflating our ego, to begin to notice the world around us a little bit more clearly, a little bit more sanely. A long quote from Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche on this very topic. Then, having made friends with yourself, you cannot just contain that friendship within you. You must have some outlet, which is your relationship with the world. So compassion becomes a bridge to the world outside. Lacking this kind of inspiration and openness, the spiritual path becomes the samsaric path of desire. One remains trapped in the desire to improve oneself, the desire to achieve imagined goals. If we feel that we cannot achieve our goal, we suffer despair and the self-torture of unfulfilled ambition. On the other hand, if we feel that we are succeeding in achieving our goal, we might become self-satisfied and aggressive. I know what I'm doing, don't touch me. We might become bloated with our knowledge, like certain experts we meet who know their subject thoroughly. If anyone asks questions, especially challenging ones, they get angry rather than trying to explain anything. And we've all experienced, perhaps, in our lives that person. And for some of us, perhaps we've experienced being that person. And when doing that, we may have experienced a rush of self-importance, empowerment. And we might also have felt a kind of shame afterwards, sort of lingering sense of dissatisfaction with our reaction. This lingering sense of dissatisfaction is important to key into, as it is a way to really blossom that openness to others. But we begin to recognize in ourselves that tendency to ignore others, to disconnect from life. And then when we begin to awaken this awareness, we begin to realize that there are others around us, and our sense of peace, sort of abiding contentment, is really connected in many ways to the extent to which we authentically connect with others, the extent to which our actions, rather than ignoring other people, actually helps to bring them along with us. Am I here now? Can I feel what's going on in my body? Can I relax around that sensation? Well, that's over. Come on out. Well done, everyone. Free drinks on the house. Almost there. Only an hour and 20 minutes left to go. So, perhaps resting onto your abdomen so as to make the next pose a little bit more accessible from the get-go. And we'll come into seal pose. This is a back bend. So for those of us working with backs that are in the process of healing, or we have some limitations to our mobility today, we'll retake Sphinx pose. The elbows under the shoulders, the legs slightly wide, and the head relaxed. For those that have more ability and more movement here, we'll start to straighten the arms. And for those who have very open spines today, the hands walk back very close to the body, and we take a very full back bend here. What we might call in Hatha Yoga, Cobra pose, or King Cobra. Again, the pelvis relaxed onto the floor. So this pose is passively stretching the front of the body. And because of the arm position, allowing the spine to be very passive as well. So there will be a sense of the low back compressing slightly here, remembering that that is intentional in our yin practice. That doesn't change whether or not some fear or anxiety will arise around this. But again, we attend to the 3 questions and we try to create some relaxation. Relaxation does not mean, by the way, that we continue to persist in a pose that will hurt us, but rather that we relax for a moment and then we make a decision from that space of relaxation rather than from that space of anxiety. We all are familiar with what that reaction from anxiety looks like. That's what we're trying to short circuit. When searching for inspirations for this class, trying to find some literary or other references to help connect to the idea, it's interesting where one can or cannot find inspiration. Aesop's Fables, for example, was not a hugely helpful point of inspiration. It tends to involve a lot of animals tricking each other. But we have this, but there was actually a perfect one which I'll share with you. So we have this sense that when we are trying to be the fastest, that we are essentially creating this aggrandized position. So whether we're the fastest or the smartest or the best, that we're unassailable. And it also blinds us to our ability to help others or how we can best help others. There's an Aesop fable called The Boy Bathing. And it reads as, a boy bathing in a river was in danger of being drowned. He called out to a passing traveler for help. But instead of holding out a helping hand, the man stood by unconcernedly and scolded the boy for his bad decisions. "Oh, sir," cried the youth, "pray help me now and scold me afterwards." The lesson being, counsel without help is useless. We've all met those people. Maybe we've been one of those people at a time in our lives where we see someone struggling and what we really decide to do is stop and teach them a lesson. You know, you wouldn't be in this situation if you were just more responsible. So we learn that, or the teaching helps to remind us that when a person is drowning, it's not the right time for us to try and exercise the qualities that we think make ourselves useful or better. We instead reach out and help that person. Not trying to be the fastest, not trying to do the best, but trying to be helpful, to bring others along with us. to bring others along with us. So the antidote perhaps to trying to be the fastest is trying to be the one who brings the most people along. To uplift the most people as they go along. Am I here now? Can I feel what's going on in my body? Can I relax around that sensation? Please slowly come down. Take a moment to rest your spine. As you rest your spine, connecting with the three questions, also just as we approach the end of our class, last few postures, beginning to absorb and contemplate the idea of not trying to be the fastest by measuring how we progress as how many people come along with us. Now, if you would please, roll onto your spine. You can keep your head oriented as it is. We're going to do a neck stretch. And in these postures, when we work with smaller muscle groups or smaller muscular or skeletal areas, we hold them for a shorter period of time. This neck stretch is both delicious and easily done anywhere you are, as it will stretch and open the neck and the shoulder. So please, if you would, bend your right knee, placing your foot flat on the floor and slightly to the outside of the line of your hip. So it's almost as if you're trying to take it shoulders distance from you, or shoulders width. And reach down and please grab your right ankle with your right hand. Having grabbed your right ankle, please shimmy the foot forward a bit until you feel a good stretch on the top of your shoulder. Now, taking your left hand to the right side of your skull, gently drag your head over to the side until you feel a deep stretch through the top of your shoulder and through the side of your neck. Try to keep the body somewhat straight on here as you do this. We are simultaneously stretching the trapezius, large muscle mass at the top of the shoulders, as well as both the levator scapulae and the SCM. These are the two muscles that run from the jaw, base of the skull, down to the shoulders, case of the levator scapulae from the back, and then the one that runs from the jaw to the collarbone. Both ones that can get very tense and tight. You may pull as deeply as you'd like without straining and without aggression. Whatever creates a good stretch through the entire line of your shoulder up through your neck. As you continue to stretch here, you can also choose to shift your foot slightly more forward. These are options for how to increase the intensity. So you don't have to pull your neck further over as much as you continue to move your foot away, which will also stretch and open the shoulder girdle, depending upon where your mobility is. For some, it'll be greater mobility in the shoulder, and for some, it'll be greater mobility through the side of the neck. We'll release from the pose in a few seconds, remembering that these poses are held for a shorter period of time than the ones focusing on the large muscle groups. Am I here now? Can I feel what's going on in my body? Can I relax around that sensation? Please, if you would, release slowly and use your left hand to press your head back to center and pause. For some people, after doing this pose, there's a sort of deep sense of emptiness in the neck, which can be either very soothing if we've experienced quite a bit of discomfort here, and if we haven't, it can be a little bit disconcerting as well. So we just relax with that quality. And then, of course, taking the other side now by bending the left leg and placing the foot flat on the floor. The foot positioned near the outer line of the hip, or more in line with the shoulder. And we reach down with that left hand to grasp onto the ankle. Then, shimmying that foot forward, we find a way to stretch down through the shoulder. And then, using the right hand, we slowly grasp the left side of the skull and pull it to the side here, adding more of a stretch. Again, please find that level of stretch that is best for you. As we stretch and release the neck here on our back, left hand clasping ankle, right hand clasping skull. We can, of course, use, again, a little bit more pressure on the head or a little bit more forward movement through the foot to increase the stretch and pull here. In particular, if the stretch begins to relax completely. For most of us, though, we'll have quite a bit of tension to work out here. So we may choose to stay as we are, the initial version. So just thinking of progress, the term progress comes from two Latin roots meaning to walk forward. Thinking of our progress in life as walking forward with others. Am I here now? Can I feel what's going on in my body? Can I relax around that sensation? Please release your neck, release your leg, slowly bringing your head back to center. Pause for a moment here. Again, relaxing with the sensation of the deep stretch of the neck and the shoulders. Our last posture today will be a variation of Sphinx pose to connect with the last section or last position of the gallbladder meridian. So as you're ready to, we come back onto the stomach. You can simply roll onto your belly here. And from here, interlocking the fingers together, depending upon our bodies, this interlock may or may not work. Thumbs pointing up. This is probably the only pose I'm really worried about causing injury to anybody. Don't stab your eye. But bringing the head down to the thumbs, and where you're resting is on the inner line of the eye where the nose and the eye socket connect. So this part of the skull here. You're just resting the weight of the head there. This stimulates the last gallbladder point. Again, since this is a small area of the body, we'll hold it for a shorter period of time. Gently pressing into the inner eye line. Am I here now? Can I feel what's going on in my body? Can I relax around that sensation? So slowly begin to first release pressure, inner line, and then slowly lower down completely. Take a moment here first, and then please find yourself in a restful position, whether that be on your back or on your side, relaxing completely and deeply. Taking a few minutes here to rest, to restore, and to contemplate. Don't try and be the fastest. So closing with an offering from Rumi, once again through Daniel Ladinsky, called Move Closer to the River, from the book The Purity of Desire, 100 Poems of Rumi. The prairies ablaze, and all the birds and animals move closer to the river, following their knowing. God's breath whips the fury even higher, but the lone tree on the plain cannot leave. It quickly calculates its fate, while eons of dignity from all the forests that have ever been now step forward in its heart to help, to lend their courage. It understands this rising conversation, this potential, brilliant, glowing, fatal end. See, it folds its leaves in prayer and begins to sway and dance. See how, given no other choice, it now even invites the annihilation of itself, knowing life is too sacred to ever end, knowing all is just another beginning. The sky can never deny such bravery, defiant charm and grace, and the tree does so with no expectations at all, for so naturally inherent in it and us is sublime poise. Weak need now becomes the king before one of his subjects, for something just mirrored him, rivaled God's strength and beauty. So rightfully weak need and humbled becomes the Lord before such fearlessness and love. He starts carrying buckets from the well. So please begin now to move your body slowly, taking time now to reawaken. Eventually being called to sit upright, once again in dignity. Legs grounded by earth and spine buoyed by that earthen base, rising up. So the crown of the head light stands perched on the column of the neck. Feeling how that dignity is generated not through solitude, but through connection. Connection to earth, connection to sky, and everything in between. To close the practice, taking the hands to the hip crease in preparation for the bow. The aspiration with 3 chimes, and then bowing on the 3rd and final one. May I experience happiness and the root of happiness. May you experience happiness and the root of happiness. May all beings experience happiness and the root of happiness. Namaste.
Namaste.
So thank you, everyone,
Thank you.
for a wonderful class.
I'm going to give on Kim and Sonny for not